Good morning, everyone. Today's topic will be anesthetic strategies in patients with child C coming for surgeries other than transplant. So, out of all the patients undergoing elective surgery, the prevalence of cirrhosis in patients is found to be around 0.8 to 1%. Cirrhosis, it increases the risk of post-operative complication by approximately 47% and over 2.5 times the risk of in-hospital mortality in patients undergoing elective surgery. Hence, a meticulous preoperative assessment and carefully planned anesthetic management is required in this high-risk population. Now, traditionally, CTP scoring has been used to classify the severity of liver disease. As we can see, the CTP-C class subset of patient, these are the sickest of the patient, and each of this component of the CTP it has its own effect on the post-operative morbidity and mortality. The patients with CTP-C, they usually present with encephalopathy of grade 3 and 4, for which they could be intubated for a long time. They also present with ascites, which could be diuretic resistance, which gives a problem in the post-operative period, which can lead to rapid filling ascites, which can interfere with the healing of the wound. Bilirubin is usually more than 3. They are usually hypoalbuminic, and the INR is around more than 2.3, which predisposes them to coagulopathy during the perioperative period. Now, what are the pathophysiologic alterations in the patients with cirrhosis and with CTP child C? There is dysfunction of the protein synthesis, which can lead to malnutrition and sarcopenia, which hinders with the wound healing and physical recovery in the post-operative period. The presence of portal hypotension, it increases the risk of surgical bleeding during the intraoperative period in the splanchnic circulation, and the patient is undergoing any thoracic or cardiac surgery into the thoracic cavity and also in the peritoneal cavities. Thrombocytopenia, it also interferes with the primary hemostasis, and disruptions in the secondary hemostasis, it can lead to, it's very difficult to predict based on the traditional laboratory test whether the patient with a hypocoagulable tech might bleed in the surgery, or sometimes they don't bleed in the surgery. Hence, the traditional lab tests are not that reliable when it comes, when their use comes to in the intraoperative period. Hepatic protein dysfunction can also lead to change in the pharmacokinetics of the drugs which are used for anesthesia, and all this pathophysiologic alteration, they lead to significant potential for morbidity and mortality related to the surgery. Now, the most important step in a patient who is undergoing a CTP-C patient who is undergoing surgery is to stratify the surgical risk of this patient. If the patient has to undergo any life-saving procedure like a cardiovascular stenting or any obstructive symptoms due to any cancer or any emergency intubation, or if the patient's quality of life is going to improve after the surgery, the risk has to be taken. The surgical risk has to be assessed before deciding whether the procedure can be carried out safely or not. Certain procedures which may not interfere with the day-to-day activity of this patient and which are not emergent or urgent can be delayed until the patient has undergone successful liver transplant. And in cases where the patient is very high risk, the surgery has to be completely avoided. And also in patients who are not suitable candidates for liver transplants, it's better to avoid the surgery. The risk of post-operative mortality and complication is related to the degree of hepatic dysfunction, comorbidities, type of the surgical procedure, and expertise of the management team. Of these factors, the severity of the liver disease appears to be the most important factor in determining the mortality risk. Now, various studies have shown the mortality of CTP scores. Garrison et al. Has mentioned around 76%, and Mansoor et al. Had shown a rate of around 82% in CTP class C undergoing any kind of surgery. Telem et al. However, showed a significantly lower mortality rates of around 12% in CTP-C class, but these patients in this cohort, mostly the patients who are, they have included patients who have undergoing laparoscopic cholecystectomy and umbilical hernia repair. So maybe because of this, the mortality is less in this subset of patients. Whereas Child-Pugh A and B can undergo elective surgery with some optimization. Child-Pugh C, patients which are CTP-C are not considered candidates for elective surgery. However, recent analysis, they show lower and lower number of patients which are included in the CTP classification. Hence, there is less correlation between the CTP classification and surgical outcomes. CTP score can be used for surgical stratification, but it's better to be supplemented with MELD score, other scoring systems like the MELD score, the Mayo scoring system, and the Vocal Pen score for a better prediction of mortality after surgery. Now, what are the risks of specific surgical procedures in patients with CTPC? The location of surgery is the most important factor. The central surgeries like the cardiac surgery, abdominal surgeries, major hepatic resection, they increase the post-operative morbidity compared to the more peripheral surgeries, presumably because the central surgeries, they lead to a greater reduction in the hepatic blood flow, which is the most important determining factor in the post-operative period. Less invasive procedures such as laparoscopy other than laparotomy or endoscopic stenting or percutaneous biliary drainage for cholecystectomy may reduce the risk of this patient. Severity of the liver disease, comorbidities, age and emergency surgeries are all poor predictors for patients in CTP class C. Also, the decision of when or when not to offer surgery is very complex, and it should involve clear discussions between the treating team and the patients. Besides the duration of anesthesia, there is no current evidence suggesting that the type of anesthesia has a bearing on mortality of these patients. Other important factor is the emergent versus the elective surgery. Now, there are almost the type of surgeries are classified into almost 4 types: emergent, urgent, scheduled and elective. Emergent surgeries are the surgeries which has to be undertaken within 2 hours of presentation. Urgent surgeries are the one which gives you a bit of time, around 16 to 24 hours for optimization. Elective and scheduled surgeries can be, they are not emergency surgeries and can be scheduled as per the requirement of the patient. Now, urgency is the most strong predictor for worst outcome. Patients undergoing emergency surgeries, they have 4 to 10 times higher rate of post-operative mortality. Emergent surgery is also associated with higher rate of post-operative complications in these patients. Now, coming on to the anesthetic management, the preoperative evaluation in this patient should include the severity of liver dysfunction, any coexisting comorbidities, type of surgery, the invasive of monitoring required during the perioperative period, and the post-operative plan for a post-operative care. Now, in brief, the patient has to be clinically evaluated for the degree of decompensation of cirrhosis. The use of, if the patient is alcoholic, the use of alcohol, the history of use of alcohol, any previous surgery including any complication. The physical examination should increase the degree of jaundice, sarcopenia, ascites, edema, the mental status of the patient. And the lab studies should include a complete blood count, liver function test and the kidney function test. Imaging studies can be done in this patient. Additional testing can be done in the form of upper GI endoscopy if there is issue of any variceal bleeding, and also if you are planning to put a transesophageal probe intraoperatively, upper GI endoscopy has to be done in the preoperative period to rule out any varices of grade 3 or grade 4. Also, a transthoracic echo has to be done in all these patients, since most of these patients are prone for diastolic dysfunction, and also a full cardiac workup has to be done in the form to rule out any valvular or any systolic dysfunction. The risk has to be assessed and is to be they have to be assigned a proper ASA classification, and the risk stratification can be done with the use of MELD score and CTP score and Mayo surgical risk predictor score as mentioned before. Now, this is a brief overview of all the systemic involvement due to cirrhosis. It can lead to coagulation disturbances, it can lead to hepatorenal syndrome in the kidney, it can lead to decrease in the innate and adaptive immunity. Patient might also have a previous history of spontaneous bacterial peritonitis, which makes the dissection in the intraoperative period much more difficult. The patient in the cardiovascular system, the patient might be in a state of hyperdynamic cardiac circulation, which decreases their SVR, increases the cardiac output, and also these patients might be having cirrhotic cardiomyopathy, due to which they might be having chronotropic incompetence, which can be a problem in the intraoperative period. Nutritionally, these patients may be sarcopenic, which is a very important factor in the post-operative period, because if the patient is sarcopenic, they are very likely that they'll be ventilated for a longer time in the post-operative period, and also the recovery delays in the post-operative period. When it comes to the chest, the patient might be having hepatopulmonary syndrome for which a room air ABG has to be done, and so that we have an idea of the room air ABG in the preoperative period. Also, these patients might be having pleural effusion or hepatic hydrothorax or presence of portopulmonary syndrome. Neurologically, these patients, specifically CTP class 3, these patients will be having HE of varying grade, like grade 3 or grade 4, for which they might be intubated. So that is an additional issue with these patients. And also, there is also coagulopathy present in these patients. So coming to ascites, why it is important in these patients is because ascites can restrict your pulmonary functions and delay the perioperative recovery of the lung function. Ascites should be managed aggressively as if it is a symptomatic ascites, like the patient is not able to move or is breathless because of the ascites has to be drained, and adequate albumin replacement with 6 to 8 grams per liter has to be given if there is time for optimization in the preoperative period. Sometimes there is not this much of time. In these patients, the ascites is drained in the intraoperative period. An antibiotic prophylaxis preferably can be started with IV route before taking up for surgery. Hemostasis and coagulation, I'll just mention in brief because this will be covered in detail in the next class. Protocol-based, usually the protocol-based strategies based on the preoperative platelet and the INR is generally ineffective in the intraoperative and the postoperative period. The coagulation has to be always corrected based on TEG or ROTAM, and prophylactically fresh frozen plasma transfusions are not recommended in these patients. Usually a platelet count of 50,000 is enough for clot formation. Patients who have platelet count of less than 50,000 platelet transfusion might be considered if they are considered very high risk for bleeding, or if there is any evidence of spontaneous bleeding in the preoperative period. Prophylactic transfusion, it can lead to volume overload and unexpected thrombosis and should be avoided. Viscoelastic test should be done in all these patients. It decreases the need for red blood and plasma transfusion. And viscoelastic test should be considered before and during the surgical procedures in patients with cirrhosis to help guide a rational transfusion therapy. Coming to the cardiovascular system examination, this is a major risk factor for postoperative morbidity and mortality. This patient, as mentioned, these patients have hyperdynamic circulation, which can lead to low systemic volume resistance and high cardiac output. These patients might also be having cirrhotic cardiomyopathy, which can lead to blunted response of the pharmacological drugs used during induction and the maintenance of anesthesia, and also they might have a blunted response to pathophysiologic stress, which can lead to overt heart failure in this patient. So hence the perioperative IV fluid should be managed carefully to avoid any volume overload. Patients with liver disease are very likely to have coronary artery disease, but this may not be symptomatic in these patients due to the functional limitation associated with the liver disease. A 12-lead ECG should be obtained in all these patients, and also a resting 2D echo should be obtained to look for any portopulmonary hypertension or any valvular dysfunction or any diastolic dysfunction. Dobutamine stress echo can be done in this patient if the patient is mobile and can be shifted for the testing. However, if the patient is intubated and or has some physical limitation, this can be avoided. Same here, portopulmonary hypertension, like I said, can lead to right heart failure, which can increase the risk of perioperative morbidity and mortality in these patients with CTPC. Pulmonary evaluation, the presence of ascites or hepatic hydrothorax, it can increase the lung capacity, which can lead to ventilation perfusion mismatch. Hence, thoracocentesis is recommended only in very large pleural effusion that compromise with the respiratory functions in the preoperative period. Otherwise, a chest tube can be placed in the intraoperative period as and when required. If the patient has massive ascites or hepatic hydrothorax, supine position, as it is advised in induction, is not very well tolerated in these patients. There is increased risk of pulmonary aspiration in these patients. Also, these patients might be prone for hepatopulmonary syndrome, for which a room air ABG has to be obtained, and also a history has to be taken where the patient is using supplemental oxygen at home before this. Coming to the metabolic and electrolyte disturbances, these patients are prone to have hypoglycemia due to depletion of the glycogen stores. They are also hypoalbuminic, malnourished. Hyponatremia is also present in this patient, which is dilutional. So, usually no correction is required till the patient has a sodium level of less than 120 or is symptomatic. They can also have hyperkalemia, and they can also have metabolic acidosis due to decompensated liver cirrhosis. Now, coming on to the intraoperative goal, the most important goal in this patient is to maintain the minimize the physiological insult to the liver and the kidney. The most important thing to be looked after in this patient is maintenance of the hepatic blood flow in the intraoperative period. The oxygen supply and demand ratio to the liver has to be maintained. The pulmonary function has to be adequate. Patients who are having hepatopulmonary syndrome, a higher PO2 should not be targeted. A baseline PO2 should be obtained, and the intraoperative goal should be to maintain a PO2 of around 10 to 15 more than that. Renal perfusion should be adequately maintained. There should be avoidance of any kind of hypotension or hypoxia, and the fluid balance should be meticulous. Choice of anesthetic agent. The technique of anesthetic agent, it depends upon the surgical procedures and patient factors, and it is similar to the patients without any liver disease. Usually, these patients are not candidates for neuraxial anesthesia. Hence, in most of the patients, the technique of choice is general anesthesia. Or if the patient is undergoing any daycare procedure like ERCP or TIPS or stenting, it can be done on the monitored anesthesia care. Neuraxial anesthesia is really contraindicated in these patients due to severe coagulopathy and thrombocytopenia. Also, neuraxial anesthesia in these patients can lead to systemic hypotension, which can reduce the hepatic blood flow. And also, if in some exceptional case we can manage to put an epidural catheter with a patient of normal TEG or a normal platelets, the removal of the epidural catheter can be a problem in the post-operative period. Hence, it should be always based on TEG and ROTEM in the post-operative period rather than the absolute value of platelet and INR. Now, what happens to the drug responses in these patients? There is altered drug pharmacokinetics due to increased volume of distribution, increased fraction of active drugs due to decreased synthesis of albumin. There is reduced synthesis of some enzymes like pseudocholinesterase, prolonging the action of some muscle relaxant, and there is decreased clearance of drugs. Sedatives which can be used safely in these patients are propofol, thiopental, and dexmedetomidine need a dose reduction in this patient. Benzodiazepine the doses of benzodiazepine should be decreased by 50%, and if there is no indication of any raised ICP, ketamine is a safe drug in these patients. Coming to the opioids, fentanyl can be used in the usual doses for induction in this patient. However, a further repeated dose has to be in a reduced dose. Remifentanil is safe. Morphine and alfentanil, they have a prolonged half-life, which might lead to accumulation in this patient. As far as the neuromuscular blocking agents are concerned, atracurium and cisatracurium are safe in this patient. Succinylcholine might require a dose reduction due to the pseudocholinesterase deficiency. And vecuronium and rocuronium, usually they are a longer acting neuromuscular agents, so they require dose reduction in these patients. Volatile anesthetics, sevoflurane, isoflurane, desflurane are all considered safe to be safe in these patients, and halothane has to be completely avoided in these patients. Intraoperative consideration, the goal should be to maintain adequate hepatic blood flow and oxygen delivery to the patient to prevent decompensation. The fluid therapy should be guided either by transesophageal echo or the dynamic indices like the SVV or PPV. Vasopressors has to be used accordingly if they are not able to maintain a good mean arterial pressure. Bleeding has to be assessed assessed clinically, and it has to be assessed with the help of ROTEM or TEG. And hypothermia, since these patients are sarcopenic, they are very prone for hypothermia in the intraoperative period, and so hypothermia has to be avoided in these patients. Monitoring will depend upon the severity of the liver disease and the extent of the surgery. The standard ASA monitors like the ECG, pulse ox, end-tidal CO2, temperature, and urine output has to be used in all patients. We should have a very low threshold for using an invasive VP in this patient, and it's recommended to secure a large bore IV access in this patient, since this patient might bleed in the intraoperative period and might require massive blood transfusion. Central venous catheterization has to be used in all patients, and PA catheters can be considered in patients with portopulmonary hypertension or patients with pulmonary artery hypertension. Transesophageal echo can be used depending upon the severity of the disease and the extent of surgery, and ROTEM and TEG has to be used for coagulation correction. Post-operative care, in the post-operative period, post-operative pain management is very important in these patients, since if the pain management is not adequate, they might not be breathing properly, which might lead to further pulmonary complications in these patients. So, since neuraxial blocks are not advised in these patients, TAB block, that is transverse abdominis plane block, local infiltration, or the quadratus lumborum block can be used for pain management in these patients. Epidural analgesia should be used with caution. NSAIDs should also be used with caution, as they have a risk of GI bleeding, platelet dysfunction, and nephrotoxicity in this patient. Paracetamol can be safely used with a dose reduction of less than 2 grams per day in these patients. Sorry. And opioids, they also needs dose reduction in this patient in the post-operative period. Monitoring in the post-operative period, this patient should be very closely monitored for any signs of decompensation, like any worsening of hepatic encephalopathy, the CNS, once the patient is taken off sedation, the CNS function has to be assessed regularly. If the patient requires prolonged ventilation, the renal function has to be assessed, the coagulation has to be assessed. There should be, since there is decrease in the immunity of this patient, they are very prone for infection in the post-operative period. So that has to be assessed based on the cultures. And a strict monitoring has to be done about the electrolyte, serum glucose, and the arterial blood gas. Now, this is the ILBS data. In this, we had studied around 133 patients undergoing surgeries, cirrhotic patients undergoing non-transplant surgeries for a period of over 8 years. We included a total of 133 patients. Out of this, the average patients in class A was around 9%, in class B was around 62%, and class C was around 29%. Most of these patients were taken up for emergency surgeries, and the observed mortality at 30 days, 90 days, and 1 year was around 12% and 20% for 90 days and 1 year. Out of these, the mortality in CTP class C patients, a 30-day mortality was observed to be around 75%, a 90-day mortality was close to around 60%, and a 1 year mortality was found to be around 50% in these patients. Now, what do we follow at ILBS here? If the patient with CTPC is coming for surgery, if it is a scheduled or elective surgery, it has to be deferred till the patient has undergone transplant, or the patient has, or if the patient becomes child A or child C. Can be done, or if there is some minor procedure like an umbilical hernia repair or inguinal hernia repair, it can be done with transplant. And if the patient is if the patient can undergo elective surgery, if we have a transplant backup in case he decompensates in the post-operative period. If it is an emergent or elective surgery, emergent or urgent surgery, the most important thing would be the risk stratification and counseling of this patient based on the various scoring systems we have. A complete history and physical examination has to be done. The patient has to be optimized depending on the time we have for optimization regarding the ascites, pleural effusion, hepatic encephalopathy, and coagulopathy. Perioperatively, it's very prudent to maintain a good hepatic blood flow. The drug dosage has to be adjusted accordingly. Fluids and coagulation has to be taken care of in the intraoperative period. And in the post-operative period, we have to watch for any worsening of ascites, hepatic encephalopathy, or acute kidney injury if it is there in the preoperative period. Patient should be provided with adequate analgesia, and we should also look for infection and any coagulation disturbance in the post-operative period. Summary. The severity of the liver decompensation and the type of surgery are the most important determinants of surgical outcomes in patients with CTP-C. Whereas patients with CTP-A can undergo surgical procedures with a reasonable safety profile, CTP-C and with a MELD score of more than 15 should not undergo any elective surgical procedure. Counseling and multidisciplinary approach is of paramount importance. Emergency surgery confers around 4 to 5 times more risk of higher mortality in these patients. Laparoscopic surgery should be performed whenever possible, and a cautious control of hemostasis is a critical component of this in these patients. Nephrotoxic and hepatotoxic medication should be avoided completely in these patients, and meticulous intraoperative care with avoidance of drugs with altered. There should be meticulous choosing of the drugs with avoidance of drugs which have altered pharmacokinetics in these patients. Thank you.